Video games that are directly based on films are an extinct species at this point. What a shame, considering they've given us timeless cinematic experiences, such as this one from Spider-Man 3.
Help! Please! Someone! I'm going to die!
These games would usually be developed alongside the movie to ensure that they both release around the same time. So you would see the movie and then enter that world through the video game. Or, if you're like me, realize much later in life that despite knowing exactly what happens, you never actually watched the Indiana Jones franchise. You just played the Lego games as a kid. But what I want to focus on is the very best of the best. The top 10 rated movies on IMDb who are all around celebrated for their contributions to cinema. But what about their video games? What do those look like? Now, these films are generally older, only 3 of them being released after I was born. So, given that they don't have any video games, I won't be talking about number 5, 12 Angry Men, number 7, Schindler's List. Can you imagine what that would look like? And number 10, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. So, let's start off with number 1. Actually, I'm going to save this for the end. You'll see why later. So, let's instead start with number 2.
It insists upon itself, Lois.
What?
It insists upon itself.
What does that even mean?
The Godfather is one of the most well-regarded films of all time. I never got around to watching it myself. That is, until I made this video, and it was alright. I mean, it's not like it was Shrek 2 or anything. But we're not here to talk about the movie. We're here for its video game, and it was something. While the Godfather film premiered in 1972, the video game wouldn't be released until 37 years later in 2006. A good call to wait, considering that this is what games looked like around the time it was packing theaters. This adaptation had an original story where you play as a brand new character, Aldo Trapani, who rises up the ranks of the Corleone family, all so that he could take his revenge against those who gunned down his father. While this is a fresh take on the GCU, the Godfather Cinematic Universe, Aldo's story is still very intertwined with the events of the movie. This was actually one of the aspects that I enjoyed the most. It really fleshes out the story because you not only see what happens in between, but you're the one leaving an impact. For example, you get trained by Luca Brasi, get sent out to fulfill Bonacera's revenge requests, plant Michael's gun, put the horse to sleep, and you're also there at a pivotal point in Luca's story. No! On top of this, a good chunk of the original cast reprised their roles, including Marlon Brando. This would actually be his last ever acting role. His declining health unfortunately made a lot of what he recorded unusable, so voice actor Doug Abrahams was brought in to salvage Don Corleone's dialogue. Now, as for the gameplay itself, it is set in a very GTA-inspired world. As a part of ranking up in the family, you go on story-related missions, earn money and experience to unlock higher skills and clothing. All standard stuff really, but what I particularly liked was how the game handles your character in relation to the grand mob scene. You see, in order for the Corleone family to maintain their power, they need the support of local small businesses, even if they don't want to. There's this intimidation mechanic where you have to make this blue meter pass the green line in order for them to cooperate. You do this by making a mess of things and by getting physical with them. However, if you attempt to extort a business that already has the protection of a rival family, they will come in guns blazing. And after taking multiple lives and leaving bullet holes all over the place, the business owner might still not be intimidated enough because with all the shooting that was going on, you didn't break one of their treasured items, so they don't take you seriously yet. You could keep pushing them for more and more money, but if the meter reaches the red area, you'll find out that everyone has limits. If you keep poaching businesses from rival families, your vendetta will go up and a gang war ensues. This makes life so much harder as you'll get shot on sight and the Corleone Empire will come under attack. The way to win here would be to either simply attack them harder or to bribe the FBI to get them focused on your rivals. Bribery can also get you out of trouble from police because when you commit crimes, your heat goes up and this makes you an easy target for any nearby cops and they really want to get you. There were times when I was playing that I really did feel like, yeah, I'm a part of the Corleone family. I'm doing this because I had a hard life. My dad's dead, and I'm taking it out on this dude. While other times, I was reminded that this is a 20-year-old game. The AI for enemies are non-threatening. In fact, at the very start of the game, you're basically Superman. Enemies will also sometimes accidentally do funny stuff in the middle of combat, like how gunfights will turn into a game of whack-a-mole. NPCs spawn in and out, and they'll just be inconsistent.
I'd rather die than pay anything to the Corleones. I see your point. I'll pay.
They go about their days just like normal after seeing a violent crime. Heck, they're sometimes not even bothered walking in between ongoing shootouts. Here's a bunch of them randomly stopping to do 6-7 hands. On top of that, character models are very repetitive. The map is also fairly uneventful. Well, with the exception of the 100 film reels you have to collect. Usually, there's a whole lot of nothing substantial in between key areas, so you need a car to get around. The easiest way is to just take one, or at least try to.
Get the hell out! I need your car! This is mine now! The car of your life!
And when you do get a ride, it's kinda boring. The controls are clunky and there's no music to choose from, so you're just forced to be there with your own thoughts. I really didn't think this was going to be a horror game. Overall, I thought it was okay, and the reviews it got seemed to back that up. There's definitely something there for those that are GCU fans and want to mess around in this type of world. However, not everyone would agree. Francis Ford Coppola was the visionary director behind the 3 Godfather films, and when he saw this, he was unimpressed. I knew nothing about it. Paramount never asked me if I thought it was a good idea. I went and I took a look at what it was. What they do is they use the characters everyone knows and they hire those actors to be there and only to introduce very minor characters. And then for the next hour, they shoot and kill each other. I had absolutely nothing to do with the game and I disapprove. I think it's a misuse of film. The executive producer of the game would combat this statement by claiming that they had actually met with Coppola and shared with him their vision. Although Coppola didn't want to get involved himself, he did invite the team to his winery, which has a library full of production materials from The Godfather. Around 4 to 5 people were sent there for a week to study the material to better implement it into the game, and it does seem like, in terms of adapting the world of the film, did a good job in that specific regard. Fun fact, we actually watched this film together in our community Discord, and we regularly have movie nights, so if that interests you, we'd love to have you. Link to the server is down below. Looking forward to seeing you there. But moving on to... It is no exaggeration that The Dark Knight is generally regarded as one of the best comic book movies of all time. In fact, it's the only comic book movie on this list. Following the success of the previous film, there was a lot of anticipation for this one, and it ended up becoming the highest grossing movie of 2008. However, there was one thing missing. Unlike Batman Begins, this film had no tie-in video game, but not for a lack of trying. When the movie was first greenlit, production on the video game started as well. Pandemic Studios, the developers behind the original Star Wars Battlefront games, were tasked with development, and by late October of 2006, the Brisbane, Australia department was all set and ready to begin. However, they have yet to receive any details about the film, so they would instead start by building the basic essentials for the game. Tests were conducted and prototypes were established. After a while, the co-owner of the studio's parent company, Elevation Partners, who just so happened to be Bono, visited the studio to check on the progress. They showed him everything they were working on, and although it really wasn't much, as a fan himself, he was very excited by what he saw. What they had put together was so good that, allegedly, these early visions from the developers would actually go on in aiding with the film's production. As the studio started getting clearer movie details, the concepts for the game would get even more fleshed out. Thus, their ambitions would grow, even to the point of wanting to make this an open-world game. They would achieve this with the help of Pandemic's LA studios, who created the Odin engine for their open world game, The Saboteur. With the promises of what this engine could do, the devs had very high expectations. So once they had this, they were ready to properly put the game Batman: The Dark Knight together. And this is when everything started to fall apart. At the end of 2007, as assets were starting to be transferred over into this new engine, major issues sprouted. For some reason, the Batman model itself did not want to play nice with the engine, causing major frame stutters. When more models were transferred over, the exact same thing happened, and if there were multiple together, it would even crash the game. The developers had no idea why this was happening, and it led to a lot of frustration. It quickly became apparent that, with these setbacks, they would not be able to meet their original goal of releasing it at the same time as the movie in July. There were so many things going wrong that some developers even believed this was a lost cause and left the project entirely. It was around this time that Elevation Partners would sell Pandemic Studios to EA, who would then delay the game's release to the end of the year in December. That's when the movie's DVD will be released. This would also be their final cutoff time to get the game out, since they lose the Batman license soon after. It was in these final months that they tried their best to get some version of the game ready, but it just seemed like the more progress they made with the bugs, more issues would just pop up. For example, because of how the lighting system worked, that system had to be reprogrammed whenever any changes were made in the environment. At the very least, EA held off on making any formal announcements of the game existing, so at least there was no pressure from the public.
The video game, I saw a tiny little piece of it. They're trying to get it so that when he's gliding, that it's a sort of, there's a feeling in it that you've never really felt before, that the game doesn't stop and start. They're trying to build it in to the system, almost like watching the film.
In July, during an interview, Gary Oldman, who plays Jim Gordon, accidentally leaked that a tie-in game was being developed for the movie. The devs now had the anticipation of the fans on their already overworked shoulders. EA was also feeling the pressure and expanded the team to over 100 people, but it was all for naught. In October, after realizing that the game was nowhere near completion, EA officially cancelled it. Because of the game never being able to be released, EA missed out on potentially over $100 million in sales. As a result, on Christmas Day, the Brisbane Pandemic Studio was shuttered, and all of the developers that worked on this project had the choice of either relocating to the LA studio or losing their job. Imagine if things had gone different. If the Odin engine was never overhyped, the developers would have still been able to make a game with what they had. Sure, it might not have been an open world, but it would have likely had a smoother development, especially because they had planned to follow the story of the film very closely. I'm sure they gave it their all anyway, up until the very end. It truly is a shame that this movie, this colossal film, never got a moment to shine in the video game landscape. At the very least, we were able to get the Arkham series some years later, and the upcoming LEGO Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight game will have elements from every Batman film incorporated into it. Just like the first game, The Godfather Part II follows an original story where you play as a new character named Dominic, who was mentored by Aldo after the end of the previous title. With Dominic, however, his tale follows the film a lot more loosely as certain events are played out of order. The most jarring aspect for those who watched the movie and then played this is that, unlike in the previous game where you complete missions that took place in between film scenes, here you show up in key canon on-screen moments. It's also important to note that, unlike the first title, most of the Godfather characters were not voiced by their on-screen counterparts. Now, as you can see, this one looks a bit better than the previous title, both in regards to the characters and environments, as your surroundings are more fleshed out, but only by a bit. A lot of the main aspects of the first game are carried over, such as the extortion system. It also did try out some new things. There's this crime ring mechanic where if you own all of one type of business, you get specific benefits. For example, if you control the chop shops, you unlock armored vehicles. You'll have to stay on your toes though, since rival families are, of course, still an issue. They will do whatever it takes to carve out your territory, so you'll have to be prepared and set up guards to protect your businesses. You'll also not be alone this time around, as you'll have a squad of different NPCs that you can level up and promote. There's the Arsonist, Demolitions, Bruiser, Safecracker, Engineer, and Medic. Each of them has a specific skill that'll come in handy during your playthrough. And although it's kind of inconsequential, I like that they added dialogue options so you can have some input over how a conversation goes. What I found most interesting though is the inclusion of favors. These can be completed in return for cash or intel on rival families. The favors could be for people out in the world or those higher up in the ladder. You could get police chiefs, judges, politicians, and others with influence to owe you a favor, such as lowering your heat when it gets too intense and putting rivals in prison. But there are certain members of rival families who just simply cannot be killed. If they're put down, they're hospitalized and released back out on the street. What you need to do here is get intel through favors to figure out what their kill condition is, and once you have that, you'll be able to take them out for good. And we haven't even talked about the multiplayer aspect, where up to 16 people could play in an 8 versus 8 mode. There was also a variation of this where, for a match, a member of each team takes on the role of a Dawn, turning it into a real-time strategy game where you have to direct other players towards victory. Despite all these ambitious inclusions, the game got mostly mixed reviews. While it was relatively fun at first, it proved to be unchallenging. Turn your brain off and shoot, go from here to there, then there to here kind of game. And if you were a fan of the Godfather franchise, you'd probably be on the more disappointed side as the game took on an identity of its own, becoming more of a Mafia-style GTA clone rather than a Godfather title. And even then, the big problem of the first game is repeated here as the map is largely void of activity. It's a big sandbox with not a lot of toys. This is all without mentioning the numerous glitches, bugs, and inconsistent NPC AI. Another problem echoed from the first game. It comes as no surprise the fact that its sales were very poor, causing the plans for an adaptation of the third movie to be scrapped entirely. By the way, if you're enjoying this, please do consider subscribing. It helps out a lot. Thanks. Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring is number 8 on this list, while Return of the King is number 6. But we'll be talking about Fellowship first since it was the first one. Released in 2002, the video game is in a weird spot. Let me explain. It launched a year after the Fellowship movie, and weeks before the Two Towers film. These movies are of course based off of the J.R.R. Tolkien books, and so is this game. That's right. Aside from basically the same story being followed, this game has absolutely no relation to the film. That is not Elijah Wood. Who is that? The reason for this is ownership of the video game adaptation rights. EA held those rights for the movies. This game was not published by EA. In fact, this one was severely overshadowed by their Two Towers game that released the next month. So, I honestly don't know what to do here. Like I said, it's basically a movie tie-in while not being officially connected to the film. At least that meant it could include aspects of the book the film left out, but either way, it was not well received as the game was kinda ugly even for its time. The combat was incredibly repetitive and the maps were too big with not enough going on, so let's just move on to... Oh yeah, just look at this. Look at that action. Look at that cover. Now this is officially licensed. Released shortly after the film in 2003, this game follows the events of the movie while letting the players be more engaged to advance the plot forward. It also opens up with a scene from the movie, of which there are many that appear throughout. It starts off with Gandalf leading the charge at Helm's Deep and transitions to a rendered cutscene. This happens a lot, and it's a good way to get you immersed as it's the game signaling that the controls are now in your hands, while at other times letting you know that you could take a quick breather since you're progressing. This is a typical hack and slash experience. Light attack, heavy attack, ranged, finishing move, parries. It's all here, and of course, when you play as different characters, they'll each have their own distinct movesets. As you fight, you get graded based on how well you're doing, with perfect moves being rewarded with power and more XP gained. At the end of the mission, you could use your XP to level up character attributes. Also, you could grab a buddy to play along with since there's a co-op mode. As you can see, this game has a lot more going for it than the Fellowship adaptation. EA is no small company after all. The developers work closely with the film crew to make sure they nail transferring the movie over to this medium. From the beginning, they constantly shared their vision and received feedback from top creative heads. Every month, the filmmakers would play a copy of the game and give their opinions on what they liked and what could be improved. On top of that, the cast themselves did voiceover work for the characters and had a lot of praise for the game and everyone working on it. It cannot be overstated just how much the film team and the game team worked together, with the developers even opening up offices in New Zealand so they could be closer to the set and all of the film assets, of which EA received $250,000 from the film production crew. All of this effort would pay off considering the glowing reviews the game received. Despite the sometimes awkward camera placements, players enjoyed it for the most part. In fact, the most common critique of it is that it's too short, as it could be beaten in roughly 3 hours. The standard theatrical version of the movie is longer than that. Moving on, we can now finally bring up the #1 rated movie on IMDb, The Shawshank Redemption. Now yes, I know what you're thinking, and I had the exact same thought when I started on this video. What the heck is a Shawshank? Oh, and also yes, there is no official video game adaptation of this film, so why am I bringing it up? Despite there being no game, that hasn't stopped fans from imagining, what if? What if we got to see our favorite moments play out in a familiar pixelated interactive format? What if we went further and transferred these scenes into an even more familiar style? This is The Shawshank Redemption visualized as a Pokemon game. There truly is no limit to our imagination when we put our minds to it. The same goes for the movie in the #9 spot, Pulp Fiction. This too has no official video game, but here it is as if you were to find it in a retro arcade machine. And here's a look at what it'd be like if it were released on the PlayStation 1. There is no shortage of these types of game concepts out there, and it's a rabbit hole worth going down. Tie-in video games themselves are largely a thing of the past. It's a practice that's been long gone at this point, and I kind of miss it. This is why I like seeing this kind of stuff so much. It's a form of expression that stems from the desire to want to experience your favorite movies in a different way. Even if the games weren't always the best, they still had their charm. I mean, it's a lot easier to make a video game based on a movie than a movie based on a video game. What makes their situation more unfortunate is that it's kind of hard to play them. The films these games are based on are very well preserved, but the games themselves are not. Most of them are no longer available for purchase on official online stores, so the only way to get them is either shelling out big bucks for a physical copy or other means that aren't as accessible to the common gamer. I consider myself knowing a little something about these kinds of things, and even I had issues getting things running when I wanted to play these titles. But still, if you have fond memories of any tie-in game you've played in the past, I encourage you to seek it out again, either to play it yourself all these years later, or to just check out an online playthrough. I'm sure it'll stir up some pleasant nostalgia. Let me know down in the comments what recent movie you think would make a great video game, and thank you so much for watching.